Hello everybody, new book review. Just read Outlive by Dr. Peter Attia. This is the science and art of longevity, rethinking medicine to live better, longer. Not an awfully short book, but not really a long read either. 400 or so pages. Read it pretty quickly because I found it fascinating, very easy to read. I find it interesting also that Peter Attia, I just found out lately that they are good friends with Tim Ferriss, and I really enjoy Tim Ferriss's books. So I wonder if Tim Ferriss had been a little bit of a mentor in writing for him or anything, but I not necessarily, but I found this book had maybe some similarities. So yeah, I really enjoyed reading this book. I would say this really splits into like two parts. First part is a little bit more, not so sciencey, but it's more about like health problems and how to avoid them and everything. But then the last part is very specific: exercise, nutrition, sleep, and then also emotional health in the last part, where he talks about a little bit of his emotional health journey, of his own story a little bit. And yeah, so let's summarize a little bit. Just gonna like give you, like usual, a brief review of how I like this book. Summarize also the best ideas, a little bit for myself also to kind of memorize this. I literally finished this book yesterday, so wanna kind of rehearse and improve memory, or memorize these things a little bit better by summarizing this, but hopefully you get some practical tips also from watching this video. So yeah, there's part one, where there's 3 chapters: the long game from fast death to slow death. Then chapter 2 is medicine 3.0, rethinking medicine for the age of chronic disease. Chapter 3 is objectives, strategy, tactics, a roadmap for reading this book. In the first part, he was talking a lot about like longevity, the difference between like living long versus living like lifespan and health span is what he calls it. So there's lifespan, which means that you're going to live longer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have a better quality of life or like a better or longer health span. That might mean that you live to 100, but the last big part of your life you're just spending like sitting in the rest house, or like just basically like a vegetable or something. That's of course not a good life, and not everybody would necessarily say that they want to live a decade longer if they are literally like a vegetable in a hospital bed for the last 10 years or something like that. So what you want is actually a very long health span where you are functional, healthy, you can still do the things you used to do when you were young, you can still participate in your hobbies, you can carry your own groceries, you can drive the car, things like that. So that your quality of life doesn't drastically drop at one point. He talks about like the centenarians also, meaning people who live to over 100 years old. That is very few people, by the way. There are literally more billionaires in the world, a lot more billionaires in the world, and there's people who have lived to like 100, 110, 120. I think the longest living person was something like over 120 years old. But I think there's only, don't quote me on this, but if I recall correctly, I think he wrote that there's only one person who is over 120 years old or lived to over 120 years old. And then there was interesting facts, like some of these centenarians, they used to like drink a lot of alcohol, smoke cigarettes, but what people don't really realize is that it's not those things causing them to live longer. It's that they probably had like some habits, like still doing a lot of exercise even though they smoked or something, that really helped them live long. And of course genes play a part there too. Part 2, I'm not going to read all of the chapter names, but yeah, that was more about the centenarians and kind of that. That was a really interesting part, fascinating part. And part 3 is like yeah, that's the strategic. Then part 3 is the last part, where is the strategic practical part, where he talks about exercise. And one of the really big key takeaways for me was that exercise is really important. I know exercise is important, but I didn't know that Peter Attia would put it as like the first thing really for longevity, even before nutrition and sleep and other things. Sorry, for some reason I'm really tired and yawning all the time. But of course those things, sleep, nutrition, super important, but he put exercise First, things like VO2 max play a huge role in longevity. The better your VO2 max, grip strength, things like that, muscle mass, you need to pay attention to that stuff. Doing a lot of resistance training, because your muscle mass will naturally start to decline decade by decade as you reach about like 30, 40 years old. And strength levels actually decline even faster as we age, so we must do everything to fight against that and try to maintain as much as possible of that muscle tissue and strength and stability also, so that you can walk the stairs up, or you can like even just walk. When you're older, you might not even be able to walk without falling if you don't have enough balance and stability. Then nutrition, he briefly touched on that. He brought up an interesting point, which is like that diets are these days more like, I mean, nutrition as a topic is like very, like there's a lot of contradictory information. Everybody belongs to like one cult that is completely opposite of one. You have vegan against carnivore, you have low fat versus keto or high fat, you have like also basically like eating clean versus if it fits your macros, and all these kind of cult wars. Seems like there's a new trend all the time, and the fact is that nutrition as a topic is really hard to talk about in terms of like facts. There are very few like factual things, like absolutely factual things when you talk about nutrition. When you talk about physics, I'm actually reading Albert Einstein's biography right now, like that kind of stuff you can be like, you can speak with pretty much absolute certainty about like some things. Like if we're talking about the law of gravity, you can talk about it with absolute certainty. We don't need to test it over and over again. We have figured out that things tend to fall to the ground. If you throw a rock, it's not going to stay in the air, it's going to fall down. Physics is different. Like if when you talk about nutrition and science, there's not that much not that many studies that have been done yet, first of all, on especially long-term health effects of diets, but it's just also almost impossible to get accurate data. Like the longer-term effects that you want to study, especially, the harder it is, because if you have human subjects there that you're trying to study, like how many humans can live like robots and never slip up, never forget something, never like slip up and eat a different food. How can you completely trust a human being with a study, even if it's a controlled study where you have someone like some group of people literally living in a hospital? Like how long can you persuade a person to, or how much do you need to pay a person to really like for a long term to stay in a hospital, like that they check how you eat everything, like making sure that every bite of every meal is eaten and with the right pace and chewing it well, and making sure that like you do the same amount of exercise or whatever the study is trying to prove or find out. It's really hard to control humans. And then when you go to like monkeys or chimpanzees or mice or something, mice lifespan is very different than human lifespan. You cannot really like compare always. Like so you can find some useful stuff from those studies, but you cannot really speak in absolute certainty. This is why it's so annoying to see a lot of those people who are like so cocky and arrogant and like they know it all. Nobody knows it all about nutrition, especially. Like you have to like just tone it down a little bit. So yeah, that was one interesting thing. And yeah, people are really like stubborn about some things about nutrition. It's like a religion, or it's like talking about politics. People are really like usually biased towards some order, like they are the keto people or the carnivore people or vegan people, etc. But that's enough about that topic. Just a good point to make that, which I also hadn't thought about that much, is that it's really difficult to get really accurate, like 100% correct data from studies. Like it's an easier thing to make a study about like a pill. If people take a pill or medicine or supplement every single day, let's say medicine, if some people take a medicine every single day, we can see what the effects of that medicine is. But people even forget to take their one freaking medicine a day, so people are that bad study subjects. So then about the diet part, the nutrition part, he brought out three pretty good points there. about like caloric restriction. And by the way, the laws of thermodynamics, that's something that we can be sure of. So we can be sure of that if we overeat calories, that those calories, like the first law of thermodynamics says, energy cannot be destroyed or created. So that means that if you eat too many calories, that doesn't just disappear somewhere in the thin air. It's gonna be stored as body fat or used for something else. So that's why people gain weight, excess calories. And some people still don't really like understand that calories actually make people gain weight. If you eat less calories and you end up in a calorie deficit, like a true calorie deficit, not that you think you're in a calorie deficit, but that you are in a true calorie deficit, that energy is going to be taken somewhere, probably fat tissue, so the adipose tissue. So, but the 3 points that he brought out, there's like really 3 main ways that people go about when they want to, or if you want to lose weight. There's caloric restriction, dietary restriction, time restriction. Those are like the 3 main approaches. None of them are completely perfect or fit everybody, but let's explore this. So first one, caloric restriction means that you don't need to limit any food necessarily, but you limit the amount of calories that you eat, let's say per day or per week. And that means you can eat basically whatever foods you want, or you can, that's not ideal to just eat whatever you want, but you can eat a wide variety of foods. Main point is restricting the calories. You can do that by tracking with apps like MyFitnessPal, Chronometer. You can also do that by having a meal plan. Like if a coach makes a meal plan for you or sample meals, and those meals come out to be about like 2,000 calories, 2,500 calories, 3,000 calories, whatever that calorie target is. If you really strictly follow that, like many bodybuilders do that, then you can also accomplish body recomposition results with that, changes in your body composition. And then the second one is dietary restriction. That means things like keto, eat less than 50 grams of carbs per day. So that pretty much like it's restriction. It eliminates certain foods. Most people, when they eat keto, they cannot really eat fruits or rice or potatoes, sweet potatoes, things that have a lot of carbs. So that also carbs are 4 calories. When you restrict carbs, like basically an entire food group, you are restricting calories. So all of these actually come down eventually to calories that people don't realize. All diets in that sense are the same, because a keto diet restricts calories from carbs, vegan diet restricts calories from eating less meat, carnivore diet restricts calories from eating basically just meat, so you don't eat fruits, vegetables, starches, nothing, grains, and all of these diets really are based on that. Like there's not a popular, if you wondered why like a no lettuce diet never became popular, or like no oranges diet never became popular, because people who would restrict just those foods would still be able to eat a lot of calories because it's not that restrictive. Lettuce doesn't really contribute to the majority of the calories that we eat in a day. So that's one way, and those things tend to fail also. Like, of course, the first one has its faults too. I really tend to lean towards more of a calorie restriction approach, because that allows you to have a lot of flexibility. But I understand also that a lot of people, or not necessarily a lot of people, but some people don't really like to input everything to an app or use a scale every time they eat. So that's the downside with that. But certainly the second approach is, I would say, no better. It's not really, well, I don't want to sound like now I have like some really like, I'm really strict about one approach and like I believe this and you should believe this also, don't believe that, believe this. But there is a few downsides to things like, especially like vegan diet. Like, let's forget about even like the protein topic and everything. Like if you don't get enough amino acids and things like that. And by the way, not trying to offend any vegans listening to this, or nothing against you being vegan. If you have your reasons, moral reasons, you don't want to harm animals, blah blah blah. But the vegan diet can still result in eating excessive calories, because there's a lot of vegan junk food these days. Like you can go to McDonald's and still eat 100% vegan. You can go to Subway, eat 100% vegan. You can eat a lot of high calorie dense foods that are 100% vegan. So just going vegan doesn't always help. Meaning just going vegan, you can lose weight being vegan, but it doesn't automatically make you lose weight. Also keto diet, which I've recently tried myself, just as an experiment. You can actually still get a really high amount of calories per day because you're eating so much fat. If you don't take a look at all at how many grams of fats you're actually getting. Like one steak can have like double the fat than the other steak, and if you don't track at all, it's easy to get calories from fats. Fats have 9 calories per gram, so it's easy to get a lot of calories, and calories still matter in the end of the day, no matter even if your insulin levels are low and blah blah blah. Time restriction means basically intermittent fasting and like 1 meal a day type of eating. When you restrict the time that you can eat, you probably restrict the calories that you eat. Not always the case though, especially like intermittent fasting, the regular style, like 8 hours eating, 16 hours fasting. 8 hours is a long time to eat a lot of calories. You can eat 4,000 calories in 8 hours. I think no problem, for some people at least. It might make it a little bit easier to adhere to your calorie plan, that's the point, but it doesn't necessarily make it impossible to overeat. And one thing to understand about fasting, especially when you start to do it for longer periods, that starts to create a problem with protein deficiency or protein intake deficiency, because you're not regularly eating protein. Problem is also that if you even if you eat a lot of protein in those 8 hours or 4 hours or that 1 hour, when you have that one meal per day, you utilize it all, and it's really hard to also eat like 200 grams of protein on one sitting. Most people cannot do that. So that's the main problem there. Also, the 8 hours and 16 hours fasting thing, it's based on a mice study. There's no proof whatsoever that humans would actually gain a lot of health benefits from eating in that specific time frame. Eat only in 8 hours, fast for 16 hours. Also, fasting is no longevity magic, by the way. There are some benefits to it, but calorie deficits seem to have actually pretty similar benefits to your longevity than this, again, just some studies, but like calorie deficit versus fasting is actually not so different than people think. Like if you are in a consistent calorie deficit, you can actually gain a lot of the similar benefits from that than like a fasting window or whatever. So those are the 3 things. Then sleep is, I'm not going to want to make this video too long, but sleep is super important. We should all know that, but the main thing, or one of the really things that he stressed here, and which I've heard before but really made me just think about it even more, is if sleep was not important, why the heck are humans still sleeping about 1/3 of the day, 8 hours per 24 hours? About why would we do that? Why would have natural selection during evolution, why would it not have eliminated sleep? What's the benefit of sleep otherwise than the health benefits? Like, are you reproducing, making like children? Nope. When you're sleeping. Are you finding food? Nope. Are you eating food? Nope. Are you protected from predators or enemies? Nope. Just the opposite, because you're more vulnerable when you're asleep. So for some reason, it's a little bit like a mystery, for some reason humans and animals need sleep. Every single animal, even like white sharks, they actually sleep even though they're constantly in motion. They sleep a little bit. Horses can sleep while standing. Dolphins, interestingly, sleep 1/2 of their brain at a time, and then the other half. That's pretty interesting. Some animals like bats, certain bats, sleep like 19 hours a day. My dog is taking a nap right now. So sleep is important. It's important for the whole spectrum: emotional health, physical health, strength levels, testosterone, muscle building, fat loss, cognitive performance, or like ability to concentrate or memorize, remember. And then there's a whole list of harmful effects to your health if you are sleep deprived: Alzheimer's disease, high blood pressure, excessive cortisol levels, etc. So those should be enough reasons. By the way, when you're sleep deprived, that state is very similar to being drunk. So you should not drive if you're sleeping too little. It's very dangerous for you. And then the last part was really emphasizing, he told his story. I'm not gonna tell it the whole story here, but he had like some challenges with anger issues and stuff like that, Peter Attia, and he needed to go to like therapy and everything for that. But the main lesson there is that even if you are like optimizing everything for long life, you have to remember, what are you really living for? Is that quality of life good? If you don't have a good quality of life, if you have a shitty life and you hate yourself every day, constantly angry and miserable, then it doesn't matter that you live longer, because why do you want to live longer if every day is misery? So you want to make sure that if you're trying to live longer, you have a reason for that, that you're also optimizing life quality. And one big part of that is emotional health, seeking help if you need it, and also having that family time and everything, spent like recharging, having that mental health and emotional life also on point, and that part of your health also addressed, which current medicine doesn't really pay much attention to or have like a fix for, besides like antidepressants and things like that. So thanks for watching, everybody. Hopefully you got some good tips or new ideas from this. Get this book, I really recommend it. It's a quick read, even though it's 400 pages, because it's so easy to read. Peter Attia has also the podcast called Drive, which I have been listening while reading this, which is really nice. Listen to the podcast while you read this book, so you kind of memorize things better and you kind of get more used to those terms and everything that you understand those terms and everything that he talks about better. It's a good podcast too. But yeah, I linked this book below if you want to order it from Amazon. It's an affiliate link, so it's a small way to support this channel without any extra cost to you. Like this video if this was helpful. Subscribe for more videos like this. I have a lot of books here that I'm gonna read. I'm gonna summarize them here. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys soon.